Desperate widower welcomes a lonely mother with newborn, a secret no one saw coming. The sun hung low in the dusky Ohio sky, its warm glow swathing the neighborhood in a soft embrace. Jack sat in his worn-out armchair, staring blankly at the walls that enclosed him. They seemed to close in, filling the room with an unbearable silence. The shadows danced around him, twisting and curling, like the memories of Sarah, his beloved wife. Her laughter still echoed in the corners, a haunting lullaby that pierced the quiet of his lonely days. He loathed the silence, each moment stretched into eternity, reminding him of what he had lost. One evening, just as the twilight painted the world in shades of purple and gold, a desperate knock shattered the silence. Jack hesitated. Who could it be? He opened the door to find a young woman, disheveled and pale, clutching a newborn against her chest. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Please, I need help," she stammered. The strength of her despair ignited something deep within him, an instinct to protect, to embrace the vulnerability that mirrored his own. He welcomed her in, driven by compassion, yet gripped by a familiar emptiness. As Emily settled into his home, she brought a chaotic energy that filled the air. The baby cooed softly, and for a moment Jack felt a flicker of hope. Yet, the deeper he delved into her story, the more questions began to swirl in his mind. Emily's eyes shone with unspoken fear. She avoided certain topics, shifting the conversation when Jack mentioned anything resembling the past. Did she know something about Sarah? Days turned into weeks, and the bonds began to weave themselves tighter. Emily struggled with sleepless nights, and Jack often found himself stepping in, changing diapers, rocking the baby to sleep. But every shared laugh, every quiet moment lingered under the weight of unvoiced secrets. There was something about her movements, the way she gripped the baby like a lifeline, that set off alarms in Jack's mind. Then came the day that changed everything. While rummaging through an old drawer, Jack stumbled upon a photograph, crumpled and dusty, barely holding on to its memory. It was an image of Sarah and Emily, arms draped around each other, laughter frozen in time. Cold dread pooled in his stomach. How did they know each other? What hidden truths lay beneath the surface of this newfound friendship? His heart raced, pounding against his chest, each beat echoing the questions consuming him. Had he taken in a stranger, or was Emily something more? The bond they had forged felt fragile, teetering on the brink of collapse. Would confronting her reveal the truth, or would it shatter everything he had dared to build from the ashes of his grief? Jack stared at the photograph, the room spinning with uncertainty. As dark memories clawed their way back, he held the image, close, unable to escape the lies that had tangled around him. Was he clinging to hope, or was he simply walking deeper into a trap? The weight of secrets pressed down on his shoulders, and his heart ached at the thought of losing another loved one. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button down there to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming up. And since you're there, drop that powerful like. That really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know each amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Jack stared at the photograph, his hands trembling as the weight of the truth began to suffocate him. Emily, standing there like a spectre of his past, grinned alongside Sarah, the woman he had loved with every ounce of his being. His mind raced. Could she have been hiding this from him all along? For a heartbeat, fear gripped him. He clutched the dusty photo tighter, feeling the rough edges bite into his palm. What did this mean? Just as the walls of his world threatened to crumble, the door swung open behind him. "Jack!" Emily's voice pierced the air, a blend of urgency and dread. His heart sank. They had been on the verge of a deeper connection, but now the fragility of their bond hung by a thread. He turned slowly, the photograph still clutched against his chest, a shield and a curse. "I found this," he whispered, his voice lost in the sudden tension that enveloped the room. Emily's face paled, her eyes darting, wild and desperate. "No, you shouldn't," she started, but the baby let out a shrill cry, piercing through their moment like a dagger. Jack's instincts shifted as he took a step closer, ready to comfort the tiny creature that had somehow breathed life into the suffocating silence. The baby's cries echoed, drowning out everything else, but Jack could feel Emily's fear, heavy, palpable, wrapping around him like a shroud. "Emily, who are you, really?" The question slipped out, fraught with tension. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted in a way he couldn't quite grasp. Emily took a step back, her eyes reflecting a fear that felt contagious. "I just wanted to start over." Before he could respond, a loud crash shattered the moment. The sound came from the back of the house, a window breaking, glass scattering like memories unearthing. Jack's heart raced, and he rushed to the kitchen, adrenaline pumping. In the dim light, he caught sight of a shadow. Someone was inside. A figure slipped through the darkness, and then there she was, a woman with long hair, eyes ablaze with fury. It was Sarah. "Jack, help me!" she screamed, reaching for him. But something was off. The once sweet lilt in her voice had morphed into a raw, desperate plea, laden with chilling desperation. Jack stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend. "Sarah?" His voice faltered. A wave of disbelief swept over him. Was he imagining this? Emily stepped forward, her demeanor shifting from fear to a calm that felt unsettling. "This isn't what you think." She moved protectively, blocking Jack's view. "Get away from him!" Sarah shouted, suddenly fierce. "Emily, you don't belong here!" Jack's breath caught in his throat, confusion swirled. What had he stumbled into? Memories blurred, pulling at his heartstrings, as the two women seemed poised for battle in his small kitchen. He felt the air thicken. None of this made sense. Emily darted forward, her eyes glinting with a cold determination. "You've always been in the way, Sarah. The life you left behind. I built a future out of your ashes." Tension snapped in an electric silence. Jack's heart raced wildly, caught in a storm between two worlds, one that used to be and another he had been trying to create. Wait. What? Jack's mind struggled to process the implications. A future built from the ashes of a past he thought had been buried deep. He felt the room closing in, suffocating him. The bond with Emily, once full of promise, now tinged with shadows. The truth twisted, threatening to unravel everything. As he stood in the chaos, questions flooded his mind. What secrets had they kept? Who really was Emily? Then, before he could grasp a single answer, a scream erupted, shattering the tension. Once more, the scream tore through the room like a knife, shattering Jack's already fragile world into pieces. He spun around, eyes darting, trying to grasp the chaos that unfolded. Sarah's fierce gaze was locked on Emily now, the air heavy with unspoken words. "Get away from him!" Sarah shouted again, but this time it wasn't just the protective instinct of a wife. It felt like a warning. Emily, unwavering, met Sarah's. Fury with a cold stare. "You don't get to come back after everything." A shiver ran down Jack's spine. The divide between the two women felt like an insurmountable chasm, a storm brewing on the surface. He was caught in their tempest, the photograph still gripped tightly in his hand, a relic of a past that now felt tainted. Suddenly the baby wailed again, a high-pitched cry that pierced through the tension like thunder. Jack's instinct kicked in. He rushed towards the crib, hoping to soothe the little one, hoping to find clarity in the innocence of a child amidst the chaos swirling around him. But as he leaned over, his heart plummeted. The baby wasn't just crying, it was screaming, an agonizing sound that echoed off the walls with an urgency that demanded attention. Jack turned, confusion taking over. "Emily, what's wrong with her?" he asked, desperation leaking into his voice. Emily's face drained of color, and it felt like the very air around them shifted. "Jack, you need to listen." A tremor laced her voice, her eyes darting back to Sarah. "She's not what you think." Before he could process her words, a thick, palpable silence fell. It felt suffocating, wrapping around him like a heavy blanket. The world faded away, leaving only 3 hearts pounding in shared fear. He looked between the 2 women, questions swirling in his mind. "Not what I think," Jack echoed, frustration simmering just below the surface. "What does that even mean?" The walls felt like they were closing in on him. Just then, Emily hesitated, her resolve seemingly faltering. "It's not just a past, Jack. It's a cycle." "What cycle?" he snapped, feeling the weight of impending calamity pressing down. Everything happened so fast. Without warning, Emily's eyes, filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination, suddenly glowed with an unusual intensity. She reached for Jack's arm, fingers trembling. "You must understand. The baby. She's connected to us." A beat passed. His heart skipped. "Connected how?" he whispered, dread curling within his chest. Then the power surged. The lights flickered violently, and all the doors slammed shut with a force that rattled the very foundation of the house. Jack was thrown back, clutching the wall for support, as the world spun wildly. A shadow stretched across the dim room, swirling like dark smoke around them. In that moment, everything changed. The shadows coalesced, revealing a figure that emerged from the dark. It was Sarah, but different. The edges of her form flickered like a faulty hologram, and Jack's breath caught as he took a step back. "You've trapped us." Sarah's voice echoed, layered with an unearthly sound. "You're part of this now." "No. What is happening?" Jack's voice cracked, fear clawing at his throat. Things spiraled out of control. Emily's hold on him tightened, but the fear in her eyes mirrored his own. "Jack, don't you see? You're not just a widower. You're part of something bigger. There's a reason I came to you, a reason we're all connected." And then, as if responding to her words, the child let out a scream, sharp and piercing, that cracked through the air like glass shattering. A flash of light enveloped the room, blinding him momentarily. When Jack could finally see again, everything had shifted. Emily stood before him, but her face was now a mask of something ancient and knowing. "Time is running out," she whispered, her voice low and haunting as shadows twisted and turned, looming larger than before. Jack felt the floor beneath him tremble. The sense of reality warped, leaving him dizzy and gasping. What had he stumbled into? What truth had he unleashed? In that moment of dread, Jack stood frozen, adrenaline coursing through him. Confusion thickened like fog, unveiling a nexus of secrets that threatened to choke him. Was it too late to turn back? And more terrifyingly, was he meant to be a part of this unraveling mystery? As the shadows began to crawl closer, he knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. Jack stood there, heart pounding, as the shadows writhed around him. His breath quickened, each inhalation filled with fear. He needed answers. He took a step forward, but everything felt like it was collapsing. He turned to Emily, confusion swirling in his gut. "What do you mean, connected?" he asked, his voice shaky. The air shifted. Emily's expression darkened. "You don't understand," she murmured, her tone desperate. A flicker of something sinister crossed her face, and Jack's gut twisted. Suddenly the lights flickered again, brighter this time, blinding him momentarily. Jack shielded his eyes, his heart racing. And then a scream cut through the air, a scream not from the baby, but from Sarah. "Jack, don't let her control." "You!" He spun around, his mind raced. Control, what was happening? The air thickened with tension and the shadows surged closer, inching forward like a dark tide. "Jack, she's lying!" Sarah cried, her voice rising over the chaos. "You can't trust her!" Just then Emily's grasp on him tightened, her eyes wild. "Jack, you have to see the truth. She's not just your wife, she's our past, and she left us." His heart sank at her words. A fire ignited in him, the familiar ache of betrayal filling his chest. "Left us? What are you talking about?" And then the baby screamed again, a sound so filled with terror that it shattered his resolve. He turned to the crib, instinctively, reaching for the child, desperate to comfort the tiny creature born into this chaos. But when he looked into the crib, his breath caught in his throat. The baby was gone. An empty blanket lay there, the remnants of a life already stolen. "What? Where is she?" Jack gasped, looking back at Emily, panic flooding his senses. A chilling laugh echoed in the room, sending shivers down his spine. "You were never meant to hold her, Jack," Emily said, her voice steadying, almost triumphant. She was merely a vessel. Confusion twisted in Jack's stomach as disbelief gnawed at him. "A vessel? What are you saying?" He looked at Sarah, desperately searching for an answer, but the shadows engulfed her. "Jack, you have to believe me. I loved you." "You loved me?" Emily interjected, her voice low with menace. "Or did you just love the idea of me? The idea of your perfect life?" The air became electric, and Jack struggled to breathe. Reality seemed to bend as a dark murmur filled the corners of his mind. Secrets hidden in shadows, whispers of guilt and pain. Each heartbeat echoed the weight of the truth, threatening to drown him. Emily stepped forward, her face hardening. "You loved the past, Jack, but the past is gone. I'm here now. I saved you." Jack stepped back, clenching his fists. "Saved me? This isn't salvation. This is a nightmare." "Then wake up," Emily hissed, her eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. Just then, with a deafening crash, the front door exploded open, and in walked a man, a figure cloaked in shadow. Jack's blood turned cold as recognition dawned. It was Mike, Sarah's brother, the one Jack hadn't seen in years. "Jack!" he bellowed, eyes wide with fear. "You don't know what you're involved in." Jack's head spun. The secret spiraled like a whirlwind, tightening around him. "What is happening? Who is this?" "Emily is—" Mike started, but before he could finish, the room trembled and the walls began to pulse, traits of life inside them. Jack felt it, a grip around his chest like a vice. Suddenly, everything went dark. The shadows roared to life, swirling in a tempest of rage. Jack felt weightless, the world collapsing around him. "No!" he shouted, reaching out for something, anything. Then came the flash, a deafening light that obliterated the darkness. He shut his eyes against the brilliance. When he opened them again, he stood on a different street. The neighborhood morphed, unfamiliar and twisted. Dread washed over him. Was it all a trick? But then he looked down, at a small hand grasping his. It was the baby. No, it couldn't be. Confusion surged through him. He bent down, and then everything shattered in an instant. He saw the baby's face, and his heart froze. It was a face he recognized. "Sarah?" he gasped, but the echoes of her name rang hollow, lost in the chaos that surrounded him. As the darkness closed, in once more, Jack realized, nothing would ever be the same again. Jack stared down at the baby's face, eyes wide and innocent. "Sarah," he whispered, his heart pounding in his chest. Confusion flooded his mind, churning through a storm of emotions. A wild sense of familiarity washed over him. This couldn't be real. As he reached out, a sudden tremor underfoot shook him deeper than any earthquake could. The ground felt unstable, as if the very fabric of reality was fraying at the seams. "What is happening?" he gasped, looking around frantically. Then a blinding flash erupted, surging through the shadows that clung to the walls. The burst of light threw him back, and everything went white for a moment. He had to shield his eyes, and when he could see again, he found himself in a different place, somewhere far removed from his home. The air was charged, heavy with anticipation. A vast, dimly lit room stretched out before him, filled with strange symbols dancing on ancient parchments. The scent of dust and ages-old wood filled his nostrils. He turned slowly, confusion mingling with dread. This was not his kitchen. "Jack!" a voice echoed, soft but urgent. He whipped around to see Emily standing there, but she looked different. Her hair glowed with a strange light, and her eyes, once filled with warmth, now sparkled with a calculating intensity. "You don't understand just how intertwined our lives are. Where am I? What is all this?" Jack's heart raced, the tightening in his chest suffocating. The overwhelming need for answers clawed at him. Emily stepped closer, and the air crackled with tension. "This place is where our destinies collide. You're part of something far greater." "Destinies? What are you talking about?" The urgency in his voice echoed in the room. But before she could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man cloaked in darkness with eyes that glinted like shards of glass. "Jack," he said, voice smooth and deep, "you need to know the truth." Jack's pulse quickened. The man stepped closer, every movement deliberate. "You thought you lost Sarah, but she lives in ways you can't begin to comprehend. What do you mean?" Fear gripped him, wrapping around his heart like a steel band. "She was never just your wife. She is the key." The man gestured wildly, and the walls trembled in response. "And Emily, she's here to finish what was begun." Jack turned to Emily, confusion and betrayal swirling within him. "Is this true?" Before she could answer, the room exploded with motion. Shapes twisted around them, shadows morphing into grotesque forms, swirling with rage. An unearthly wail filled the air, reverberating through Jack's bones. "Stop!" Jack shouted, feeling the overwhelming tide of darkness press against him. The eerie figures rushed closer, their voices hissing in a language he couldn't understand. One, larger than the rest, reached for him, dark tendrils extending like grasping hands. "No!" Jack screamed, but Emily stood frozen, mesmerized. "Jack!" her voice echoed, thick with equal parts fear and determination. "You have to choose now. Trust me or lose everything." In that moment, a fragment of clarity pierced through the chaos. Time seemed to slow, and Jack glanced back at the figure, the man who spoke of secrets. "Is Sarah responsible for this?" he demanded, his voice steady. "Sarah is a part of the cycle. To understand that is to understand the true nature of this battle," he replied, his tone dripping with meaning. Jack's heart raced as he faced a terrible realization, one that washed over him like ice water. His thoughts spun, grasping for something solid. "What cycle?" he muttered, realizing. He might not like the answer. With a screeching howl, the shadows pressed their advantage, surrounding him, and for a heartbreaking second, Jack felt the pull of despair threaten to consume him. The man's eyes held a hint of something else. Something sinister behind the calmness, and then he knew. The truth hit him like a physical blow. The powerful pull of revelation swept through him. "You're not who you say you are," Jack exclaimed, his voice thick with disbelief. "Neither are you, Jack," the man replied, a smile creeping across his face that sent chills down Jack's spine. Everything blurred, and then he woke, but he wasn't in the room anymore. He was outside, staring at the sky, the stars swirling above him like lost dreams. He blinked, disoriented. An empty crib loomed nearby, the sound of a lone baby crying, echoing off into the ether, but the voice didn't belong to Sarah. It was Emily's, "Come back!" she screamed, and then everything fell away, leaving him alone in the overwhelming darkness, a horrifying truth lingering in his mind. He was in a fight for something he didn't yet understand, and now he was at the very center of it. But the true battle was just beginning. Jack stood in the dark, the weight of confusion pressing down on him as he took in the empty crib and the relentless cries of a child echoing in his mind. Emily's voice rang in his ears, a desperate plea, and yet something felt unnervingly off. The shadows writhed around him, dark tendrils of doubt creeping in deeper. "Where is she?" he asked again, wrestling with rising panic. It felt like the whole world teetered on the edge, ready to collapse. Just then, Emily's gaze shifted, and her expression morphed from anxiety to something unreadable. The light above flickered, illuminating the room just long enough for Jack to take a deep breath. "You have to understand, Jack. This is beyond just you and me." He felt a cold, prickling sensation spread across his skin. "What do you mean?" Suddenly, the shadows around them surged, shrinking back as a figure emerged, tall, ominous, with sharp features cloaked in that same darkness. It was the man from before, the one who claimed to know everything. "Every choice you've made has led you here, and now it's time to face the truth." Before Jack could respond, something shifted in the atmosphere. The air thickened, charged with an electric energy that sent a shiver through him. "Jack!" Sarah's voice echoed in his mind, but it was a ghost of her past. The warmth he once felt replaced with an unsettling chill. He took a step back, heart racing. "What's happening?" he shouted. The shadows, now swirling violently, pulsed, with a life of their own, weaving through the room like a storm closing in. "Jack, listen to me," Emily shouted over the rising chaos. "You can't hide from the truth anymore. You are part of a legacy, a cycle that binds us all. You won't understand until you see—" But before she could finish, the baby appeared in Jack's arms, cooing gently, a soft light radiating from her little body, illuminating the room. "No, stop!" he exclaimed, blinking in disbelief. The child shouldn't be here, not like this, not while chaos consumed everything around him. Suddenly, a hair-raising scream shattered the moment, a sound so filled with anguish that it clawed at Jack's insides. He spun around in horror to see Sarah standing before him, not the image from his memories, but raw and real. Tears streamed down her face. "Jack, you have to break the cycle." "What cycle?" he yelled, desperate for clarity, desperate to understand. Then it hit him like a tidal wave. The laughter, the warmth, everything that had meant safety, shattered in that instant. "Emily," he whispered, realization dawning. "Who are you? Really?" A twisted smile crept across her face. "Not who you think. I'm the shadow that brings forth your fears, the manifestation of what your love lost." The realization jolted through him. She wasn't just a stranger. She was something darker, something born from the grief he clung to. A laugh echoed around them, twisting and turning, slicing through the tension. The shadows pulled back, revealing a deeper truth. The figure of Sarah began to glow, illuminating Emily like a dark mirror, reflecting all her secrets. Jack's heart raced, fear gripping him as the room morphed again, all about him fading into obscurity. A link between the two women shimmered, dark and bright in contrast, revealing the bond that tied his past to the present tighter than he'd ever imagined. As the world around him shifted, a blinding light enveloped them. He closed his eyes against it, and when they opened again, things were different. The weight of betrayal wrapped around his heart. Emily stood before him now, transformed, her essence clashing against Sarah's ethereal glow. "Now," Emily said, her voice cold and resolute, "you must choose. Your heart holds the power to break free or succumb. Will you trust Sarah or me, The lights pulsed erratically. Jack's world hung by a thread, and he realized he was faced with a choice that would rip apart every notion he had ever known. And then everything went dark, leaving only the question hanging in the air. Would he reclaim what was lost, or was he destined to repeat the cycle? Jack stood there, heart pounding, as the shadows swirled around him. Emily's face was hard, her eyes flickering with something almost alive. The atmosphere was thick, heavy with dread and anticipation. "Your choice, Jack," she shouted, her voice cutting through the rising chaos. "Trust her or trust me." But before he could answer, everything shifted. A sudden, piercing scream erupted from the shadows behind them. It echoed like thunder, in the confined space, making Jack jump. The lights flickered violently, casting wild shadows against the walls. His heart raced as he turned toward the source of the sound, fear thrumming through his veins, feeling the weight of something immense looming just beyond his vision. "Get back!" Sarah yelled, her voice thick with desperation and anger. She shielded herself as if expecting an attack. The shadows rippled wildly, and in that moment the very fabric of reality strained. Then, without warning, a bright light exploded from the center of the room, illuminating everything in its path. Jack shielded his eyes, squinting against the brilliance. When the light faded, a figure stood in its place. A woman. She looked exactly like Emily, yet somehow different. Her presence radiated authority, power, and an unsettling familiarity. Jack's breath caught. Who was this new person? "Mother," the woman said, her voice echoing with an unusual depth. "You've unleashed a storm that you cannot control." She locked eyes with Jack, an intensity there that sent shivers down his spine. "And you, Jack, you hold the key." "What?" Jack's mind whirled, unsure of how to process the revelation that punched through the chaotic air. "Who are you?" Emily shrank back, her expression shifting from anger to confusion, face paling. "No, it can't be." "Don't you recognize me?" The woman stepped forward, illuminating the room with her otherworldly presence. "I am the truth you've been running from. I'm your daughter." Time stopped. Jack felt his heart lurch, caught between disbelief and a fracture of hope. "Daughter, but I thought—" Words tumbled from him, struggling against the truth he couldn't quite grasp. "But you lost me," the woman continued, her voice echoing with heartbreak. "You lost sight of me the day Sarah died. You were too consumed by grief to see what lay in waiting." Jack stumbled back, breath hitching in his throat. "This isn't possible." Emily's face twisted with conflict. The room was tense. Shadows fluttered, their erratic movements intensifying as they enveloped Jack's mind. "She's lying. She can't be real." "No, she is real," Sarah shouted, her voice resonating with urgency. "She's been trapped. We've been trapped. The cycle, it's all connected, Jack." Jack's heart raced wildly. He turned to face the daughter he never knew he had. "How is this happening? How are you here?" "I've waited for you to understand," she said, voice steady, despite the chaos. "The darkness comes from within. But you must choose, Dad. Face your past or let it consume you. Let it consume all of us." As Jack absorbed the weight of her words, the air around them thickened again. A deep rumbling grew louder, vibrations pulsing through the floor. He gripped his head, shock flooding his mind. The tension was palpable. The shadows seemed to converge and sway as if craving his response. "Trust me, and we can end this," his daughter pleaded, stepping closer. "But you must want it. You must choose to break the cycle." And then, without warning, the lights shattered completely, plunging them into darkness. Jack could feel himself slipping, the weight of the truth pressing on him like a suffocating blanket. In the black abyss, he gasped for clarity, for a path forward. But as silence descended, he felt something cold graze against his arm. The shadows had come alive. They reached for him, surrounding him in a desperate embrace. In that moment of Pure darkness. Jack realized the truth. The battle was not just outside, but within. How could he possibly navigate a web spun of love, loss, and betrayal? The question echoed in his mind as he heard his daughter's voice fading, a whisper of hope amidst the chaos. Break the cycle, Dad. But could he? And at what cost? The uncertainty gripped him, leaving him teetering on the edge of everything he thought he knew. Jack stood there, heart pounding, as the shadows swirled around him. Emily's face was hard, her eyes flickering with something almost alive. The atmosphere was thick, heavy with dread and anticipation. "Your choice, Jack," she shouted, her voice cutting through the rising chaos. "Trust her or trust me." But before he could answer, everything shifted. A sudden, piercing scream erupted from the shadows behind them. It echoed like thunder in the confined space, making Jack jump. The lights flickered violently, casting wild shadows against the walls. His heart raced as he turned toward the source of the sound, fear thrumming through his veins, feeling the weight of something immense looming just beyond his vision. "Get back!" Sarah yelled, her voice thick with desperation and anger. She shielded herself as if expecting an attack. The shadows rippled violently, and in that moment, the very fabric of reality strained. Then, without warning, a bright light exploded from the center of the room, illuminating everything in its path. Jack shielded his eyes, squinting against the brilliance. When the light faded, a figure stood in its place. A woman. She looked exactly like Emily, yet somehow different. Her presence radiated authority, power, and an unsettling familiarity. Jack's breath caught. Who was this new person? "Mother," the woman said, her voice echoing with an unusual depth, "you've unleashed a storm that you cannot control." She locked eyes with Jack, an intensity there that sent shivers down his spine. "And you, Jack, you hold the key." "What?" Jack's mind whirled, unsure of how to process the revelation that punched through the chaotic air. "Who are you?" Emily shrank back, her expression shifting from anger to confusion, face paling. "No, it can't be. Don't you recognize me?" The woman stepped forward, illuminating the room with her otherworldly presence. "I am the truth you've been running from. I'm your daughter." Time stopped. Jack felt his heart lurch, caught between disbelief and a fracture of hope. "Daughter? But I thought—" Words tumbled from him, struggling against the truth he couldn't quite grasp. "But you lost me," the woman continued, her voice echoing with heartbreak. "You lost sight of me the day Sarah died. You were too consumed by grief to see what lay in waiting." Jack stumbled back, breath hitching in his throat. "This isn't possible." Emily's face twisted with conflict. The room was tense. Shadows fluttered, their erratic movements intensifying as they enveloped Jack's mind. "She's lying. She can't be real." "No, she is real," Sarah shouted, her voice resonating with urgency. "She's been trapped. We've been trapped. The cycle. It's all connected, Jack." Jack's heart raced wildly. He turned to face the daughter he never knew he had. "How is this happening? How are you here?" "I've waited for you to understand," she said, voice steady. "Despite the chaos, the darkness comes from within. But you must choose, Dad. Face your past or let it consume you. Let it consume all of us." As Jack absorbed the weight of her words, the air around them thickened again. A deep rumbling grew louder, vibrations pulsing through the floor. He gripped his head, shock flooding his mind. The tension was palpable. The shadows seemed to converge and sway as if craving his response. "Trust me, and we can end this," his daughter pleaded, stepping closer. "But you must want it. You must choose to break the cycle." And then, without warning, the lights shattered completely, plunging them into darkness. Jack could feel himself slipping, the weight of the truth pressing on him like a suffocating blanket. In the black abyss, he gasped for clarity, for a path forward. But as silence descended, he felt something cold graze against his arm. The shadows had come alive. They reached for him, surrounding him in a desperate embrace. In that moment of pure darkness, Jack realized the truth. The battle was not just outside, but within. How could he possibly navigate a web spun of love, loss, and betrayal? A whisper cut through the dark, soft yet penetrating. "You must see the truth, Jack." It was a voice he recognized. Sarah. Sarah? His heart twisted with hope and confusion. "What do you mean? What you thought was lost isn't lost at all." A flash of light pulsed again, illuminating the chaos. Suddenly a strange figure appeared. An older man, familiar yet unsettling, standing beside Emily, his presence radiating authority. "Jack," he spoke, his voice echoing with depth, "what you've feared for so long is the truth you must now face. Emily is not who you think she is." Panic surged through Jack, the weight of the revelation crashing over him. "What are you saying?" "Emily is a reflection of your grief, an illusion created to bind you to pain," he said, gesturing toward the swirling shadows. "And your daughter, she's been here watching you from the other side. It's time to let go. You are trapped in a cycle you have created." Time collapsed around Jack, and suddenly everything shifted. Emily's form distorted, twisting into something monstrous, revealing her true self. "No, I'm your salvation," she screamed, her voice cracking, squeezing a gasp from him. As horror filled the room, Sarah stepped forward, raising a hand to Jack. "Let go of the past. It's time to claim your future." But before Jack could respond, the ground trembled violently. In an instant, a shockwave rippled outward, throwing all of them back with a force that shattered the very air around them. Everything went black. And in that darkness, Jack realized this fight was just beginning. Everything he thought he knew, just an illusion. The darkness wrapped around Jack like a heavy shroud, suffocating and thick. He couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Panic surged. He felt himself fall, and then an abrupt silence engulfed him. And in that silence, everything shifted. A blinding light exploded from nowhere. It pierced the darkness with a fierce determination, illuminating the faces of everyone present. Jack squinted against the brightness, forcing himself to stay focused. When his vision adjusted, the figure of his daughter remained illuminated before him. But her expression wasn't one of hope anymore. It was one of sheer terror. "Dad! You have to get us out!" she screamed, but the words felt like a warning instead of a plea. Jack's heart raced, thumping in rhythm with the chaos around him. The shadows wriggled, dark arms reaching closer, hungry for something he didn't understand. The air crackled with tension. He could feel Sarah's presence growing stronger. But Emily was shifting too, her expression darkening as if a storm brewed inside her. "Jack!" Emily shouted, her voice a mix of anguish and fury. Then a smirk broke free. "You think you can fight this? You think you can just choose?" But before he could respond, the walls trembled violently. The whole reality felt like it was shaking apart. "What is happening?" he gasped, looking at all three of them, desperate for answers that felt just out of reach. And then, without warning, the shadows lunged. A horrific, piercing shriek filled the air, rattling Jack to his core, reverberating in his chest. For an instant, everything shimmered, paused, as the shadows consumed the light, swallowing the room in darkness once more. Then he saw something. Something, or someone, unexplainable, from deep within the void. Two eyes glimmered back at him. They weren't threatening, they were familiar, a blend of warmth and sorrow. It was the little girl from before, the baby he thought he had lost. "Jack!" Her voice was a whisper, yet it felt like a thunderclap. "It wasn't me." Time spun, weightless. Jack could only stare as the darkness melted away, revealing previously unseen truths. In that fraction of a second, he realized, the little girl was not just a daughter, but something much, much bigger. Something that linked back to Sarah's past. unraveling like a thread from a tapestry he thought he understood. In that moment of clarity, terrible knowledge washed over him. His daughter wasn't just a victim of circumstance, she was the thread holding everything together. The cycle they mentioned wasn't a trap, it was a prophecy, an intertwining of souls, meant to fulfill something far beyond them all. Then suddenly Sarah, in all her radiant glory, clenched her fists, her eyes fixing on Emily. You told him. You let him believe. It's worse than I imagined. Jack staggered back, struggling to piece this together through the confusion. What are you talking about? As if responding, darkness roared back, a vortex forming at their center. Emily's laughter sliced through the wind, twisted by the shadows. You think you understand. This has always been about control. Then the room exploded in a blinding flash, illuminating Emily for one fleeting moment. Her form dissolved, revealing her true nature. She was not what Jack thought. She wasn't even human. "Emily, where are you going?" he screamed. The laughter grew louder, merging with the cries of confusion. The walls of reality bent and twisted, revealing fragments of Emily's past, visions of betrayal, manipulation, dark secrets woven into her existence. "Jack, see, you must witness," Sarah cried out, urgency edging her voice, and just as he felt he would be pulled into the abyss, a thought struck him like lightning. Everything he'd endured didn't matter as much as what they were about to face together. He couldn't lose them all. "Stop this!" Jack shouted defiantly. "I won't let you take her!" And then silence shattered again. The darkness ripped apart, a chasm opening wide before him, an unending void filled with whispers of what could have been. "Do you love?" A thunderous roar echoed, and at last Jack understood. The question lingered in the air, impossible to ignore. In that terrifying moment, everything came into focus. Trust was on trial, destiny at stake, and the truth lay bare. He had to choose. But could he? As the abyss threatened to swallow him whole, Jack felt everything shift. The question loomed large, echoing in the darkness, leaving him to ponder, was love truly enough? Jack's heart raced as the darkness roared around him. He had to act. As he stood there, the swirling chaos threatened to consume him, but the echo of his daughter's voice echoed in his mind. "You must face the truth." With a deep breath, he planted his feet firmly on the ground. "I choose to face it," he shouted, voice slicing through the storm. "I choose love." The shadows hesitated, almost taken aback by the intensity of his words, quivering, as if they feared the power of his choice. Emily, or whatever horror she had truly become, sneered. "Love? What do you know of it?" Her voice dripped with disdain, but the walls trembled as Jack felt a warmth rising within him, a light that surged stronger than the shadows. "I know it's worth fighting for. I know it connects us all." The truth welled up in Jack, and, with it, he saw glimpses of memories, laughter, smiles, the tender moments he shared with Sarah, and the love he could give to his daughter. He focused on those, letting hope guide him. "Let me show you, Dad." His daughter's voice broke. Through the darkness, her small form flickering into view, radiating a gentle glow that illuminated the room. "Together we can break this cycle." With each word spoken, the shadows writhed and recoiled, drawn to the warmth radiating from Jack and his daughter. "We love you," she called, her voice lifting like a beacon. "Let go of the pain." And in that moment of clarity, Jack reached for her, a fierce determination igniting his spirit. "I choose to love you and the memory of Sarah. I refuse to let the darkness win." He felt his heart swell, a fierce warmth growing stronger, pushing against the shadows that sought to swallow him whole. The darkness shrieked, a sound more haunting than any he'd ever heard. It rippled, thrashing like a wounded beast, frantically trying to hold on to the despair it thrived on. Jack's vision cleared, revealing glimpses of memories, ghostly silhouettes of his past, moments where love triumphed, friendships formed, a family built against all odds. "Not this time!" he shouted, palms open to the light glowing between him and the shadows. "You're just a remnant of my grief. I'm done hiding." With that he hurled all his love, his hope, and everything that made him human into the fray. A blinding light erupted, splintering through the darkness like a knife. The shadows screeched one final time, a cacophony that echoed around the room. Then silence fell, heavy and profound. Jack felt weightless, suspended in the space between fear and release. As the dust settled, Jack glimpsed Emily's form retreating into the abyss, but the darkness around her flickered and diminished. Clarity washed over him. "You're nothing without my pain," he called after her, rooted in strength. Sarah's spirit emerged, vibrant and radiant. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered, her voice a soft caress. "You've freed us." There, your daughter stood beside her, the ethereal glow bridging between them. "I love you both," Jack said, tears streaming down his face. "I'll never forget." With a radiant smile, Sarah nodded. "Now it's time for new beginnings." Jack closed his eyes, breathing in the moment, honoring what had been while embracing what lay ahead. He opened his eyes to find himself back in the living room, the remnants of darkness fading into echoes of laughter and warmth. The spirits of his loved ones lingered, shimmering waves of peace flowing through him. He knew now that love would forever connect them, but as they dissipated, a final whisper echoed, "You are our light, Jack." As the sunlight broke through the horizon, warming his face, Jack stood amidst the quiet, knowing this was just the beginning. A flicker of something still danced around him, the promise of a new chapter. Life was full of uncertainties, but he would face them all head-on, love as his guiding star. The screen blinked before him, reality swirling with possibilities. He didn't know what awaited, but he was ready, and as his senses ignited with hope, he felt the world shift, aware that just beyond the horizon, new adventures were to unfold. Now in this moment I need you to take action. You need to subscribe to the channel right now to not miss the next exclusive stories that will sweep you off your feet. Smash that like button. Now you know it feeds the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this gripping ending. Don't wait one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is everything. Only true fans know how crucial this is. Let's keep this community alive together.